A virgin forced to spend 3 nights with a billionaire, but his last demand left her in tears. Warm welcome from Alcot Stories. Welcome to Alcot Stories, a world where love, emotions, and destiny create unforgettable journeys. Here, we bring you deeply touching love stories filled with romance, passion, and heartfelt moments that will keep you hooked until the very last word. Every story is designed to make you feel the love, experience the heartbreak, and cherish the joy of true emotions. Because love isn't just a story, it's an experience. If you enjoy soul-stirring romance, unexpected twists, and deeply emotional endings, then you're in the perfect place. Tap the subscribe button and enable notifications so you never miss a story that will capture your heart. Drop your thoughts in the comments. We love connecting with you. Don't forget to like and share with fellow romance lovers. Alcott Stories, where every love story is felt, not just told. Love. Anna had always known struggle. From the time she was a child, life had been an uphill battle. She had watched her father, Richard, work tirelessly to provide for her after her mother's passing. Yet no matter how hard he worked, poverty clung to them like an unshakable shadow. Their home was small, too small for comfort. The paint on the walls was peeling, and the wooden floor creaked with every step. Their furniture was worn, the fabric faded from years of use. But despite their financial hardships, Anna had never once blamed her father. He had done his best to raise her with love and dignity. That evening, as the dim light of their kitchen flickered, Anna prepared a simple meal, boiled rice and lentils. It wasn't much, but it was what they could afford. She hummed softly to herself, stirring the pot, unaware that her father was watching her from across the room with deep sorrow in his eyes. Richard's heart ached as he looked at his daughter. She was young, beautiful, and full of life, yet trapped in a cycle of poverty. He had failed to give her the life she deserved, and now desperation had driven him to consider something he never imagined, something that made his heart twist with guilt. Richard took a deep breath and sat down at the wooden dining table. His fingers trembled as he clasped them together. His voice was hesitant, yet firm. "Anna," he called softly. She turned to him with a smile, unaware of the storm about to break in her life. "Yes, Dad." He hesitated for a moment before exhaling heavily. "I need you to listen to me carefully." The seriousness in his tone made Anna pause. She set down the spoon and turned to him fully, her warm brown eyes filled with concern. "What is it?" Richard's throat tightened. How could he say this to his own daughter? He closed his eyes briefly before speaking. "There's a man, a very powerful man." He swallowed hard. "His name is Alexander Knight. He's a millionaire CEO. Anna frowned, confused. "And?" Richard's fingers tightened around the edge of the table. He likes you, Anna." Her confusion deepened. "What do you mean he likes me?" Richard sighed and met her eyes. "He's interested in you, and if he proposes, I want you to accept." For a moment there was only silence. Then Anna let out a soft, disbelieving laugh. "Dad, what are you saying?" "I'm saying you should consider it," Richard insisted. His voice was firmer now, laced with desperation. Anna's heart pounded. "No, this isn't right." She stood abruptly, shaking her head. "You're asking me to marry someone I don't love. That's not fair." Richard clenched his jaw. "Fair? Do you think life has been fair to us?" Tears burned in Anna's eyes. "Dad, I have dreams. I want to marry for love, not money." Richard's shoulders slumped. "I know, sweetheart, but love won't put food on our table. Love won't pay our debts." Anna wiped her tears away, refusing to accept what he was saying. "There has to be another way. I can work harder. We can figure this out." Richard exhaled shakily. "There is no other way." His next words sent a chill down her spine. If you spend 3 nights with him, he might fall in love with you. Anna's breath hitched. 3 nights. Richard hesitated before finally revealing the full truth. And on the last night, you give him sleeping pills, then take his money, his gold watches, and leave. Anna stumbled back, her face draining of color. No, she whispered. No, Dad, this is wrong. Richard's eyes glistened with unshed tears. Please try to understand, dear. We are drowning in debt. I owe money to dangerous people. If we don't do this, they will come for me. For us. Anna clenched her fists. You're asking me to betray a man who has done nothing to us. I'm asking you to survive, Richard corrected, his voice thick with pain. Anna's chest heaved. I am a virgin, Dad, she said, her voice trembling. I have always dreamed that when I got married, my husband would find me pure. Richard looked away, unable to meet her eyes. I know, he whispered. Tears rolled down her cheeks. Then how can you ask this of me? Richard's hands trembled as he rubbed his face. Because I am desperate, Anna. He finally looked at her, his own eyes wet with sorrow. I have no choice. Anna turned away, shaking her head. Her mind was spinning. How could her own father ask her to do something like this? The man who had raised her, protected her, was now pushing her into a situation that could ruin her forever. For the first time in her life, she felt utterly alone. Hours passed. The food on the table went cold, untouched. Anna sat in silence, staring at the flickering light bulb above them. Richard sat across from her, his face pale and exhausted. Please, Anna, he whispered one last time. Anna closed her eyes. She felt like a puppet with strings being pulled by a force she couldn't escape. Finally, her voice broke the silence. Fine, she whispered. Richard sat up. What? I'll do it, she said, her voice barely above a breath. Her father let out a deep, shaky sigh of relief. Thank you, my child. But as Anna stared at the wall, tears rolled down her cheeks. She had just agreed to something that shattered her very soul. Would she ever forgive herself? She didn't know. All she knew was that her life would never be the same again. Anna stood in front of the mirror, her hands trembling as she adjusted the simple yet elegant dress her father had chosen for her. It was soft blue, hugging her curves modestly, yet it did little to calm the storm raging inside her heart. Tonight was the night. She had agreed to meet Alexander Knight, the powerful millionaire CEO, a man she had never spoken to, never even dreamed of encountering in such a setting. And yet, here she was, about to step into his world, pretending to be someone she was not. Her reflection stared back at her, filled with uncertainty. Was she really about to do this? Anna, her father's voice broke through her thoughts. She turned to see him standing at the doorway, his eyes heavy with emotions he refused to show. You look beautiful, he murmured. Anna swallowed hard. Dad, I don't know if I can do this. Richard sighed and stepped closer, resting a firm yet gentle hand on her shoulder. You have to, sweetheart. This is our only chance. Her heart clenched, but she nodded. She had no choice. Taking a deep breath, she grabbed her small purse, stepped into her heels, and walked out the door, leaving behind the life she had always known. The restaurant was breathtaking. Crystal chandeliers hung from the high ceiling, casting a soft golden glow over the pristine white tablecloths. The air was filled with the scent of freshly prepared gourmet dishes, and the quiet hum of conversations created an atmosphere of exclusivity. Anna felt out of place the moment she stepped in. She wasn't like the other women here, elegantly draped in designer gowns, their laughter effortless, their presence exuding wealth and confidence. She was just a simple girl, playing a role in a dangerous game. And then she saw him, Alexander Knight. He sat at a table near the large windows overlooking the city skyline. His tailored black suit fit him perfectly, highlighting his broad shoulders and strong physique. His thick, dark hair was styled to perfection, and when he turned his head, she caught sight of his piercing blue eyes, intense, powerful, and impossibly captivating. The moment his gaze landed on her, something in the air shifted. The room, the people, the noise. It all faded. Anna's breath hitched as he stood up, his presence commanding. Every step he took toward her felt like a countdown to something inevitable. He extended his hand. Anna. His voice was deep, smooth, sending an unexpected shiver down her spine. She forced a smile and took his hand, his touch warm against her cold fingers. "It's nice to meet you, Mr. Knight," a smirk played on his lips. "Alexander," he corrected. "No formalities tonight." She nodded, her heart pounding. As they settled at the table, she felt the weight of his gaze studying her, intensely, curiously. Alexander poured them both a glass of wine, his movements graceful yet controlled. "Tell me, Anna, why does a woman as stunning as you seem so nervous?" Anna's fingers tightened around the stem of her glass. She had prepared for this, rehearsed possible conversations in her head, but nothing could have prepared her for him. I just didn't expect this," she admitted honestly. His brow arched slightly. "This," she gestured vaguely, "a man like you being interested in someone like me." Amusement flickered in his eyes. "And what kind of man do you think I am?" She hesitated. "Someone powerful, someone who always gets what he wants." His smirk deepened. "You're not wrong." Her heart pounded harder. Alexander leaned forward slightly, resting his elbows on the table. "You intrigue me, Anna." She blinked. "Why?" "You're different." His eyes studied her like she was a puzzle he was trying to solve. "Every woman who comes into my life usually has an agenda. But you look like you're trying to escape." Anna's throat dried. Had he seen through her already? "I don't know what you mean," she whispered. He chuckled, swirling his wine. "You will." She forced a small laugh, trying to regain control of the conversation. "And what about you? Do you always bring women here?" He smirked. "You're the first." Anna's stomach twisted. She didn't know if that was a lie, but something about the way he said it made her believe him. As the dinner continued, Anna found herself caught between two conflicting emotions. Fear, because she knew she was playing with fire, and curiosity, because despite everything, she wanted to understand this man. By the time dessert arrived, she had forgotten, just for a moment, about her father's plan. The evening was coming to an end, and Alexander had barely taken his eyes off her the entire night. As the waiter cleared their plates, he leaned back in his chair, watching her with an unreadable expression. "Come with me." Anna's breath caught. "What?" "To my penthouse," he said smoothly. "Let's continue this night." She froze. This was it. This was what her father had planned, the beginning of the 3 nights. She should have felt disgusted. She should have been afraid. But instead she felt trapped, trapped in his presence, in his gaze, in the dangerous way he made her feel. She hesitated, every muscle in her body screaming at her to walk away. But she couldn't, because she had a mission. Taking a deep breath, she gave him a small smile. "Okay." His smirk returned, victorious. He stood, offering his hand. She took it. And as they walked out of the restaurant, stepping into the dark, luxurious world of Alexander Knight, Anna knew. This was just the beginning. A dangerous game had begun, and she had no idea who would win. Anna followed Alexander into his private penthouse, her heart hammering against her chest. The elevator ride was silent, filled only with the quiet hum of the moving floors. She could feel the weight of his presence beside her, his cologne, a mix of cedarwood and something intoxicatingly masculine, filling her senses. When the doors opened, Anna's breath caught. The penthouse was breathtaking. Floor-to-ceiling windows displayed a panoramic view of the glittering city skyline. The living space was vast, adorned with modern furniture, expensive artwork, and dim, golden lighting that cast a warm glow over everything. But despite its beauty, the place felt empty. As Alexander led her inside, he loosened his tie, rolling his sleeves up to his elbows. "Would you like some wine?" he asked, his voice deep and smooth. Anna hesitated before nodding. "Just a little." He poured 2 glasses, handing her one before leading her toward the balcony. The night air was cool, carrying a faint breeze. Below them, the city buzzed with life, but up here everything felt isolated. Anna sipped her wine slowly, stealing a glance at him. He stood with his hands in his pockets, staring out into the night, lost in thought. "You don't seem like a man who enjoys company often," she said softly. He chuckled, glancing at her. "What makes you say that?" She shrugged. "This place is beautiful, but it feels lonely." His smirk faded slightly. He exhaled, running a hand through his dark hair. "That's because it is." Anna frowned. "You have everything: money, power, luxury. How can you be lonely?" Alexander took a sip of his drink, his blue eyes unreadable. "Because having everything doesn't mean having what truly matters." For the next few hours, they talked, really talked. Anna expected him to be arrogant, to boast about his success. But instead, Alexander opened up in a way she never anticipated. He spoke of his childhood, of being raised in wealth but never feeling love. His father had been a ruthless businessman, more concerned with profits than family. His mother had drowned in luxury, but not in happiness. "People always want something from me," he admitted, staring at his drink. "Business partners, women, even so-called friends. No one ever sees me for who I really am." Anna felt a pang in her chest. She was doing exactly what he feared, pretending, deceiving. And yet, in this moment, she saw the real him. "You are different, Anna," he murmured, turning to face her. Her breath caught. "What do you mean?" "I feel something with you," he whispered. "Something I've never felt before." Her heart pounded. This wasn't part of the plan. She was supposed to make him fall for her, but why did it feel like she was the one falling? The conversation shifted into silence, the kind that wasn't awkward but heavy with unspoken emotions. Alexander reached out, brushing a stray strand of hair from her face. His fingers lingered against her skin, sending a shiver down her spine. "You're beautiful," he said, his voice lower now, filled with something deeper than admiration. Anna swallowed hard. She knew she had to be careful, but the way he looked at her made her forget everything. "Alexander, He gently pulled her into a warm embrace. His arms were strong, protective, and for a moment she allowed herself to melt into his hold. The city lights flickered below them, but all Anna could hear was the rapid beating of her heart. "I don't want to rush anything," he murmured against her hair. "I just want you to be here, with me." Tears pricked her eyes. She had expected lust, desire, an attempt to claim her. But instead he offered affection, genuine and unforced, and that terrified her more than anything. As the night deepened, they moved back inside. Alexander led her to the couch, where they sat close, too close. He continued talking, sharing memories, childhood stories, fears, and dreams he never spoke of to anyone. And Anna? She found herself listening, absorbing every word, feeling emotions she never intended to feel. This was supposed to be a mission, a game. But why did it feel so real? She knew she had to leave soon, return to her father, continue the plan. But when Alexander gently placed his hand over hers, she couldn't move. "Stay tonight," he said softly. "Just stay." Anna looked into his eyes, those deep ocean blue eyes that held nothing but sincerity. "Okay," she whispered, and as she laid beside him that night, wrapped in the warmth of his presence, she knew everything was about to change. The golden rays of the early morning sun peeked through the sheer curtains of Alexander's penthouse. Anna stirred, feeling the warmth of the soft silk sheets against her skin. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then it all came rushing back. She turned her head slightly and saw Alexander lying beside her, not too close, not too far. His arm was resting over his forehead, his breathing calm and steady. He looked peaceful, almost vulnerable in his sleep. A pang of guilt hit her chest. She wasn't supposed to feel this way. She was here to deceive him, not to admire the way the morning light kissed his sharp features or how his strong presence made her feel safe. Anna sat up carefully, trying not to wake him. She needed to clear her head. Slipping out of bed, she tiptoed toward the bathroom, splashing cold water onto her face. "Get it together, Anna." She reminded herself of her father's words, of the debt, of the plan. 3 nights. That's all she had to endure. But last night, it wasn't an act. It was real. She had stayed with him not because she had to, but because she wanted to. Shaking her head, she exited the bathroom and found Alexander already awake, sitting at the edge of the bed, watching her. "Good morning," he said, his voice husky from sleep. "Morning," she replied, forcing a smile. His gaze softened. "Did you sleep well?" She hesitated before nodding. "Yes." He patted the space beside him, and after a moment of hesitation, she sat down. Alexander reached for her hand, lacing his fingers through hers. The warmth of his touch sent shivers down her spine. "I want to see you again tonight," he murmured, his blue eyes searching hers. "Will you come?" Her heart twisted. This wasn't supposed to happen. She was supposed to be playing him, not falling into his world. But when she looked at him, at the vulnerability behind his confident exterior, she couldn't find the strength to say no. "Yes," she whispered. Alexander smiled, brushing a soft kiss against her forehead. And that's when she felt it, an ache deep in her chest. Alexander walked her to the elevator, his hand never leaving hers. "Be careful, Anna," he said, "and don't keep me waiting too long." She swallowed hard, nodding. As the elevator doors closed, she leaned against the cool metal, shutting her eyes. She had no choice but to continue the plan. But for the first time, she wasn't sure if she wanted to. As the evening sun dipped below the horizon, Anna stepped out of the luxurious black car that had come to pick her up. The sight before her took her breath away. A magnificent yacht adorned with golden lights floated gracefully on the calm waters of the harbor. The reflection of the city skyline shimmered in the waves, creating a breathtaking view. Alexander stood at the edge of the dock, waiting for her. Dressed in a tailored black suit, his crisp white shirt unbuttoned at the top, he looked effortlessly handsome. His piercing blue eyes locked onto hers the moment she arrived, sending a familiar shiver down her spine. "Anna," he murmured, taking a step forward. She swallowed hard, pushing down the guilt rising in her chest. She was supposed to be playing him. But why did it feel like she was the one losing control? The yacht set sail, drifting away from the shore as the cool night breeze brushed against her skin. The deck was decorated with fairy lights, their golden glow creating a magical atmosphere. A soft melody played in the background, blending seamlessly with the sound of the waves. Alexander took her hand, leading her to the dance floor beneath the open sky. "Dance with me," he said, his voice soft yet commanding. Anna hesitated for only a second before placing her hand in his. As he pulled her closer, her heart pounded against her ribcage. His strong arms wrapped around her waist, his touch gentle yet firm. Their bodies moved in perfect sync, swaying to the rhythm of the music. She could feel his heartbeat against her chest, the scent of his cologne, the warmth of his breath against her temple. It was intoxicating. "You make me feel alive, Anna," he whispered, his lips brushing against her ear. "For the first time in years, I don't feel alone." Her breath hitched. She wasn't supposed to care. She wasn't supposed to fall. But as she gazed into his deep blue eyes, filled with genuine emotion, she felt something shift inside her. A dangerous feeling. Something she couldn't afford. After their dance, Alexander led her to a secluded corner of the yacht, where a candlelit dinner awaited them. The table was set with the finest china, and a chilled bottle of champagne rested in a silver bucket. "This is too much," she murmured, feeling overwhelmed. "Nothing is too much when it comes to you," he replied, pulling out a chair for her. Her stomach twisted. She should have been focusing on the plan. 3 nights. That's all she had to endure. And yet, she found herself wanting to stay. Throughout dinner, they talked. Really talked. Alexander opened up about his past, his struggles, his fears. He told her about his lonely childhood, the pressure of running a billion-dollar empire, the betrayals he had faced. "I've been surrounded by people my whole life," he admitted, swirling his wine glass. "But none of them ever truly cared." His words struck a painful chord in her heart. She was about to become just another person who betrayed him. Was she really willing to do that? As the night grew colder, Alexander draped his jacket over her shoulders, his fingers lingering against her skin. "Anna," he murmured, his voice husky with emotion. Her breath caught in her throat as he cupped her cheek, his thumb gently tracing the curve of her jaw. Everything inside her screamed to stop this, to walk away before it was too late. But when he leaned in, his lips barely brushing against hers, she forgot everything. She forgot the plan. She forgot her father's desperation. She forgot that she was supposed to leave him broken. In that moment, the only thing that mattered was him. And as his lips finally met hers in a slow, lingering kiss, she realized the truth. She wasn't deceiving Alexander. She was deceiving herself. The soft flicker of candlelight cast a golden glow over the elegantly set table. The scent of roses and ocean salt filled the night air as Anna sat across from Alexander, her heart pounding harder than ever before. She had spent hours with him, listening to his stories, feeling his warmth, and seeing a side of him she never expected, a side that made her question everything. This wasn't just some arrogant billionaire who only cared about money. This was a man who had been alone for far too long. And he was looking at her like she was the only thing that had ever made sense. She forced herself to smile as she took a sip of her wine, trying to silence the guilt gnawing at her. She was supposed to deceive him. She was supposed to break his heart. But why did it feel like hers was the one breaking? Alexander leaned back in his chair, his piercing blue eyes never leaving her face. There was a certain intensity in them tonight, something deeper, something more vulnerable. "Anna," he said softly, his voice carrying over the gentle crashing of the waves. She swallowed hard. "Yes?" He exhaled slowly, swirling his wine glass between his fingers. "I never believed in love before." Her breath caught. She wasn't sure what she had expected him to say, but that wasn't it. "Not once," he continued. "I always thought love was just an illusion, a game people played until they got bored and moved on." Anna clenched her hands under the table. He had been hurt before. He wasn't just a billionaire. He was a man who had built walls so high no one had ever climbed over them, until now. "But you," he murmured, his gaze burning into hers, "you make me want to believe." Her stomach twisted painfully. This was wrong. So wrong. She wasn't supposed to be this important to him. This wasn't part of the plan. He wasn't supposed to care. She wasn't supposed to care. Anna forced a smile, pushing down the overwhelming guilt. "That's a lot to say after knowing me for such a short time." "I know." Alexander nodded. "And trust me, I don't say things like this easily." He set his glass down and leaned forward, resting his forearms on the table. "But when I'm with you, I don't feel like the billionaire CEO. I don't feel like the man who's constantly being used or lied to. With you, I just feel like me." Anna's throat tightened. Like me. That was all he ever wanted. Not money, not power, not status. Just someone who saw him as a person. And she, the one who was planning to betray him, was the only person who had ever made him feel that way. Her chest ached. She wanted to scream, to tell him the truth, to tell him that he was right about being used and lied to. But how could she when his words had already broken her? As dinner ended, Alexander reached for her hand, his touch sending a wave of warmth through her. "Come with me," he whispered. She allowed him to guide her back to the edge of the yacht, where the moonlight bathed them in a soft glow. The sound of the ocean was calming, yet her heart raced wildly in her chest. Alexander turned to face her, his fingers brushing against her cheek. "Tell me something, Anna." "What?" she whispered. "Do you believe in love?" She hesitated. Before meeting him, she would have said yes without question. But now, love was the very thing that was tearing her apart. "I don't know," she admitted. Alexander let out a soft chuckle. "Honest. I like that about you." Her stomach twisted again. If only he knew how much she was hiding. As the night grew colder, Alexander pulled her into his arms. His warmth surrounded her, making her feel safe. Anna closed her eyes, resting her head against his chest. She could hear the steady beat of his heart, strong, unwavering, real. For the first time since meeting him, she wished she had met him under different circumstances. She wished she wasn't a woman sent to deceive him. She wished she wasn't here to betray him. She wished she was just a girl who had fallen in love with a man, because if she was being honest, that's exactly what was happening. The weight of the small bottle in Anna's purse felt heavier than anything she had ever carried. It wasn't just medicine. It was a decision that would either save her father or destroy the only man who had ever looked at her with true affection. Her father's desperate voice rang in her ears. "This is our only chance, Anna." But as she stood outside Alexander's penthouse door, her heart pounded with a different kind of urgency. Could she really do this? Before she could answer that question, the door opened, and Alexander's familiar, breathtaking smile greeted her. "You came," he said softly. Something in his eyes told her that tonight wasn't just another night for him. Tonight meant something more, and that realization made her feel sick. The penthouse was dimly lit, the atmosphere warm and intimate. Soft music played in the background as Alexander took her hand and led her inside. "I have something special planned," he murmured. Anna swallowed hard. She was supposed to be planning his downfall, but he had planned something beautiful for her. She wanted to scream. They had dinner by candlelight. Alexander wasn't just his usual charming self. He was vulnerable. "Anna," he said, breaking the silence. "I need to tell you something." She held her breath. "What is it?" He exhaled, running a hand through his hair. "I don't know how to explain this, but I think I'm falling for you." Her stomach dropped. No. This couldn't be happening. This was never supposed to be real. Her fingers trembled as she gripped the edge of the table. Alexander reached for her hand, his touch sending warmth through her skin. "I've never met someone like you, Anna," he confessed. "You're different. You see me. Not my money, not my name. Just me." Tears burned behind her eyes. If only he knew. The moment they moved to the living area, the weight of the sleeping pills in her purse became unbearable. Her father's words echoed louder. 3 nights. That's all it takes. Do this for us, Anna. She reached for her purse. This was it. She could save her father. She could walk away from this life of struggle. All she had to do was betray him. She slowly unscrewed the bottle's cap, her hands shaking. Alexander stood at the balcony, gazing at the city lights. His back was turned, unaware. She could do it now. One simple move, and it would all be over. She reached for his drink. But then, "Anna?" His voice was so gentle, so full of trust. She froze. He turned to her, his eyes searching hers. "Come here." Her breath hitched. She forced herself to walk toward him, her heart hammering against her ribs. The city lights illuminated his face, making every emotion in his eyes clear. "I don't know what's going to happen after tonight," he whispered, tucking a strand of her hair behind her ear. "But I know one thing. I don't want to lose you." A lump formed in her throat. He pulled her into his arms, holding her as if she was the most precious thing in his world. And in that moment, she realized something devastating. She loved him. She loved him. And if she went through with this, she would lose him forever. Tears slipped down her cheeks as she slowly pulled away. I need to tell you something," she choked out. Alexander frowned. "What is it?" Her hands clenched at her sides. She couldn't do this. She wouldn't do this. Taking a deep breath, she reached into her purse. Not for the sleeping pills, but for the truth. She placed the bottle on the table between them, her fingers trembling. Alexander's gaze flickered to it, then back to her. "What is this?" Her voice shook. "My father. He told me to do this," she whispered, "to drug you, to steal from you." Silence. Alexander's face remained unreadable, but his body stiffened. Anna's tears fell freely now. "I was never supposed to love you, but I do. And I can't do this to you." His expression darkened, but he didn't say a word. "Please, Alexander," she begged. "Forgive me." The air between them felt like a battlefield. Would he hate her? Would he walk away? Or worse, would he break? Anna's hands trembled as she wiped her tear-streaked face, her heart hammering against her ribs. This was it, the moment of truth. Alexander stood across from her, his piercing blue eyes locked onto hers. His jaw tightened as he took a slow, deliberate step forward. "What did you just say?" His voice was low, dangerously calm. Anna swallowed hard, guilt clawing at her throat. She had rehearsed this moment in her mind 100 times, how she would confess, how she would beg for forgiveness. But now that she was standing here, face to face with the man she had nearly betrayed, words failed her. I was never supposed to be here for love," she whispered, her voice barely audible. A shadow crossed Alexander's face. "Then why were you here, Anna?" She forced herself to look into his eyes. "My father sent me," she admitted. He told me to deceive you." The silence that followed was deafening. Alexander's entire body stiffened, his hands curling into fists at his sides. "Go on," he said, his tone now sharp. Anna's breath hitched. She could see it in his eyes, the storm brewing, the anger and disbelief rising inside him. But she had to keep going. He deserved the truth. "I was supposed to gain your trust," she confessed, her voice cracking. "Spend 3 nights with you, make you fall for me." His face hardened. And then? She hesitated. How could she say it out loud? How could she tell him that she was supposed to destroy him? Alexander took another step forward, closing the distance between them. "And then what, Anna?" Tears welled in her eyes. She felt like she was suffocating under the weight of her own guilt. "I was supposed to drug you," she whispered, "steal from you, take your money, your gold watches, and then leave you." A sharp, bitter laugh escaped Alexander's lips. He turned away, running a hand through his hair. "So, let me get this straight," he said, his voice laced with disbelief. "From the moment you walked into that restaurant, from the moment we met, this was all a lie." Anna flinched at the accusation. "No," she said desperately. "Not all of it." Alexander scoffed. "Really? Which part wasn't a lie, Anna? The part where you let me hold you. The part where you let me believe that maybe, just maybe, I'd finally found someone who wasn't after my money?" His words felt like knives stabbing into her chest. He was in pain, and it was her fault. Anna took a shaky step forward, reaching for his hand, but he pulled away. "Alexander, please," she begged. "I never meant for it to go this far. I never meant to fall for you." He let out a bitter chuckle. "But you did, didn't you?" She nodded, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. "Yes, I did," she admitted. "And that's why I'm telling you the truth now. I had the chance to betray you, but I couldn't." His gaze softened for a brief moment, but the walls around his heart remained firmly in place. "Why?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Why tell me now?" Anna's lips quivered. "Because I love you," she said brokenly. A flicker of something unreadable passed through his eyes. "You love me?" he echoed. She nodded again, desperation filling every inch of her soul. "Yes, Alexander, I love you, and I would rather lose you than hurt you." He stared at her, his expression unreadable. For the first time since she had met him, she had no idea what he was thinking. Would he forgive her? Would he throw her out of his life forever? She had no control anymore, and that terrified her. Alexander took a deep breath, his jaw clenching as he looked away. For a long time he said nothing. Then, finally, he turned back to her. "Leave." Anna felt her breath catch. "What?" she choked out. "Leave, Anna," he repeated. "I need time." Pain sliced through her heart, but she understood. She had hurt him, and he needed to decide whether he could ever trust her again. Slowly, she stepped back, her entire body trembling. "I'm sorry," she whispered one last time. Then, with tears blurring her vision, she turned and walked out the door. And just like that, the man she had fallen in love with was no longer hers. The heavy silence in the penthouse was unbearable. Alexander stood still, his face unreadable, but his clenched jaw and tensed muscles betrayed the storm brewing inside him. Anna stood before him, her hands shaking, her heart pleading for mercy. So, this was all a lie. His voice was dangerously quiet. Anna felt her knees weaken. The weight of guilt pressed against her chest, suffocating her. "It started as one," she admitted, her voice trembling. "But I never expected to fall in love with you." Her words hung between them, fragile yet desperate. Alexander let out a sharp exhale, shaking his head in disbelief. "For 3 nights I let my guard down for you," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "I let you into my world, into my heart, and the entire time you were planning to betray me." Anna took a hesitant step forward. "Alexander, please, I didn't do it. I couldn't do it because I love you." For the first time since she had met him, she saw something unfamiliar in his eyes. Pain. A deep, raw pain that cut through his usual confidence and control. "You betrayed my trust, Anna." His words were not loud. They were not full of rage, but they shattered her like glass. Alexander turned away, running a hand through his hair. Anna knew she had broken something precious, something that might never be repaired. She could feel the distance growing between them, even though he was only a few feet away. "I told you things I've never told anyone," he continued, his voice filled with disbelief. "I trusted you. I wanted something real with you." Anna's tears fell freely. "You still can," she whispered. "I'm not that person anymore." Alexander laughed bitterly. "You're not?" he asked, turning back to her. "Then tell me, Anna, when did you change? Was it before or after you walked into my life, knowing you would betray me?" His words hit like a punch to the chest. "I changed the moment I realized I loved you," she choked out. "The moment I saw how much you cared for me, how you looked at me like I was more than just another person in your life. I was supposed to hurt you, but I couldn't do it. Because you're not just some rich man to me, Alexander. You're everything." She reached for him again, desperate to touch him, to feel the warmth of the man she had come to love. But this time, he stepped back. Anna felt her heart break. Alexander let out a slow breath, his chest rising and falling as if he was trying to contain the storm inside him. "I need time," he finally said. Anna's stomach twisted. "Time?" she repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. He nodded, his eyes filled with conflict. "I don't know if I can trust you, Anna. And without trust, what are we?" She felt her world crumbling beneath her feet. "I'll do anything to make this right," she pleaded. "I'll prove to you that I'm not the woman who walked into your life with a plan to deceive you. I'll wait for you, however long it takes." Alexander stared at her, his expression unreadable. Then, without another word, he turned and walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out at the city lights. Anna took a shaky breath, realizing that this was it. She had confessed. She had given him the truth. And now she had to face the possibility that it wasn't enough, that she might have already lost him forever. The tension in the room was suffocating. Anna stood frozen, her heart pounding against her ribs as she waited for his next words. Would he cast her out? Would he tell her he never wanted to see her again? Her hands trembled at her sides, her chest rising and falling with uneven breaths. Alexander sat on the edge of the couch, elbows resting on his knees, fingers interlocked. His expression was unreadable, his piercing blue eyes staring at the floor, lost in deep thought. Anna had never seen him like this, so vulnerable, so conflicted. "I should hate you," he finally murmured, his voice low, almost as if he were speaking to himself. His words sent a sharp pain through her chest. She clenched her fists, preparing for the worst. But then he looked up, his eyes locking onto hers. "But I don't." Anna gasped softly. Hope flickered in her heart, fragile yet undeniable. "I should be furious," Alexander continued, his voice raw with emotion. "You came into my life with a plan to deceive me. You were supposed to betray me. But—" he paused, exhaling deeply as if struggling to find the right words. "But when I look at you now, I don't see a liar. I don't see a thief." Anna's lips parted, her pulse racing. "What do you see?" she whispered. Alexander leaned back against the couch, rubbing his temples before meeting her gaze once more. "I see someone who is lost, someone who never wanted to do this in the first place." Tears spilled down Anna's cheeks. "Yes," she choked out. "I never wanted to hurt you, Alexander. I was forced into this. But after spending time with you, I realized that you're not just a millionaire to me. You're not just some target. You're—" She swallowed hard, forcing herself to say the words her heart had been screaming all along. "You're the man I love." Alexander's breath hitched slightly, but he quickly masked his reaction. Love. That word had never meant much to him before. He had seen love twisted, used as a game, as a means to manipulate. But when Anna said it, it sounded real, and that scared him. Anna took a tentative step forward. "Can you ever forgive me?" she asked, her voice laced with desperation. Alexander let out a slow, deep breath, staring at her for what felt like an eternity. "I don't know," he admitted. Her heart sank. She had expected anger, rejection, maybe even hatred. But uncertainty. That was worse. Because uncertainty meant he was struggling. It meant he still felt something for her. But would it be enough? Alexander rose from the couch, towering over her. "I want to believe you, Anna. I want to believe that everything we shared wasn't just an illusion." "It wasn't," she whispered. "But how can I be sure?" he asked, his tone filled with raw vulnerability. "How do I know this isn't just another game?" Anna shook her head frantically. "No games, Alexander. Not anymore. I swear to you, I don't want your money. I don't want anything from you except you." He studied her, searching her face for any trace of deception, and all he saw was truth. Painful, unfiltered truth. He turned away, walking toward the window, his hands shoved deep into his pockets. Anna's heart clenched. Was this it? Was he going to walk away from her forever? She took a deep breath and whispered, "I'll leave if that's what you want." Alexander stiffened. Her words hit him harder than he expected. She was giving him the choice. For the first time in his life, someone wasn't trying to take something from him. She wasn't forcing herself into his world. She was letting him decide. Minutes passed in unbearable silence. Then, finally, Alexander turned around. His face was still guarded, his emotions carefully concealed, but his eyes told a different story. "Don't leave," he said, his voice softer this time. Anna's breath caught in her throat. "Alexander." He ran a hand through his hair, exhaling sharply. "I'm not saying I can forgive you yet," he admitted, "but I need time. And if you really meant what you said, if you really love me, then prove it." Anna nodded rapidly, hope surging in her chest. "I will," she promised. "I'll do whatever it takes." For the first time that night, a small, almost imperceptible smile played on Alexander's lips. He wasn't ready to let go. Not yet. And maybe, just maybe, this wasn't the end, but the beginning of something even deeper. Anna stood at the doorway, her fingers trembling as they hovered over the doorknob. She couldn't stay. Not after everything she had done. Not after breaking the heart of the only man who had ever made her feel truly loved. She swallowed hard, her chest tight with the weight of her decision. "I understand," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I don't deserve your forgiveness, Alexander. I don't deserve you." Her heart shattered as she took a step forward, her heels clicking against the marble floor. Every step away from him felt like a knife slicing through her soul. But then, "Stay." The word stopped her in her tracks. Her breath hitched, her fingers tightening around the strap of her purse. She turned around slowly, afraid to believe what she had just heard. "What?" she asked, her voice shaking. Alexander stood in the center of the room, his eyes locked onto hers with an intensity that made her legs weak. His expression was unreadable, torn between vulnerability and restraint. "Stay, Anna," he repeated, softer this time. "If we start over, with honesty this time, maybe we have a chance." Anna stared at him, her pulse racing. She wanted nothing more than to run into his arms, to bury herself in his embrace and never let go. But, "Alexander, how can you still want me after everything?" she asked, her voice filled with raw emotion. He sighed, raking a hand through his dark hair. "I don't know," he admitted. "I should hate you. I should want you gone." His words sent a painful shiver down her spine. "But I don't," he continued, his eyes locked onto hers. "I can't." Anna's lips parted, but no words came out. He took a step closer, his presence overwhelming. "You lied to me," he said. "You hurt me." Tears welled in her eyes. "I know. But when I look at you, Anna..." His voice softened, filled with something deep, something real. "I still see the woman who made me believe in love for the first time." A sob escaped her lips. Could she really stay? Could she really let herself hope for a second chance? Anna glanced at the open door. Beyond it was freedom. A way to escape the pain, the guilt, the shame. But inside this room, inside his arms, was the one thing she had always longed for. Love. She took a shaky breath. "I don't want to hurt you again, Alexander," she confessed. "I don't want to be the reason you doubt love." His gaze softened. "Then don't." Her heart pounded. It wasn't a demand, it was a plea, a chance. Slowly, hesitantly, she stepped back into the room, closing the door behind her. She was choosing him. She was choosing them. And in that moment, she knew this was just the beginning. The days that followed were filled with uncertainty. Anna remained by Alexander's side, but she could feel the weight of everything that had happened between them. Though he had asked her to stay, she knew that forgiveness wasn't instant. Trust had been broken. and trust, once shattered, took time to rebuild. Yet, despite the lingering doubts in his eyes, Alexander still welcomed her into his life. He didn't send her away. He didn't push her aside. Instead, he let her in, bit by bit, day by day. Anna cherished every moment, knowing how fragile their second chance was. She no longer wanted to prove anything to her father. She no longer cared about wealth or security. All she wanted was him. Not the billionaire, not the powerful CEO, just Alexander, the man who had taught her what love truly felt like. One evening, Alexander invited Anna to his private estate, a place he had never taken any other woman before. It was a breathtaking villa on the outskirts of the city, surrounded by lush gardens and a shimmering lake. As they walked through the peaceful landscape, he finally spoke the words she had been waiting to hear. "I want to trust you, Anna," he said, his deep voice carrying both hesitation and hope. Her heart clenched. "And I know trust doesn't come overnight," he continued, glancing at her. "But you're still here, even after everything." Anna turned to him, her eyes shining. "I'll always be here, Alexander." A small, rare smile touched his lips. He reached for her hand, his fingers intertwined with hers, and for the first time since she had confessed the truth, she felt something shift between them. The walls were still there, but they were crumbling, little by little. That night, Alexander planned something special. Not in a high-end restaurant, not in a grand ballroom, but somewhere simple, real. A candlelit dinner under the stars, just the two of them. Soft music played in the background as they sat by the lake, the golden lights flickering against the water's surface. "This is beautiful," Anna whispered, gazing at him in awe. "You deserve something beautiful," he said, his voice low and sincere. Her breath caught in her throat. This wasn't just a date. It wasn't just another night together. It was a promise, a silent vow that what they were building was no longer a lie. As the night deepened, Alexander's gaze turned serious. "There's something I need to ask you," he said. Anna nodded. "Anything." He took a deep breath. "Why did you choose to tell me the truth?" She blinked, startled by the question. "You could have gone through with the plan," he continued. "You could have stolen from me, walked away, and never looked back." Anna lowered her gaze. "I couldn't do it," she admitted. "Not to you." Silence hung between them. Then, she looked into his eyes, her voice trembling with emotion. "Because somewhere between the lies, I fell in love with you." Alexander exhaled, his tension easing. And in that moment, something finally clicked between them. For the first time since everything had happened, Alexander cupped her face in his hands. His touch was gentle, yet filled with unspoken emotions. Anna's breath hitched as he leaned in, their lips mere inches apart. "Anna," he whispered. And then, their lips met in a kiss that was soft yet powerful, filled with every emotion they had been holding back. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't just passion. It was love, a new beginning, a silent promise that they would face whatever came next, together. The words hung between them, heavy with meaning. Alexander's piercing blue eyes softened as he reached out, brushing a stray tear from Anna's cheek. "You may have come into my life with a lie," he repeated, his voice steady yet filled with emotion. "But you're staying because of love." Anna's heart clenched at his words. Despite everything, despite the betrayal, the broken trust, and the pain, he still chose her. Not because of her beauty, not because of her past, but because of the love they had built from something imperfect. Tears welled up in her eyes. "I never want to hurt you again." Alexander cupped her face gently. "Then don't." Her breath hitched. He was giving her a choice, not forcing her to stay, not binding her with guilt, simply asking her to choose him. And she did, with all her heart. The next morning, Alexander woke up before Anna. He stood by the window, looking out at the city skyline, lost in thought. This woman, the one who was once sent to betray him, now meant more to him than anyone ever had. But did he truly trust her? Could he? As if sensing his turmoil, Anna stirred, her sleepy voice breaking the silence. "Alexander?" He turned, meeting her soft brown eyes. There was no deceit in them, no hidden agenda, just love. And in that moment he knew she had already passed the test. Later that evening, Alexander took Anna to his private villa again. This time, it wasn't just for a romantic dinner. He had something more important in mind. As they walked through the lush gardens, he suddenly stopped and turned to her. "Anna," he said, his voice steady, "do you trust me?" She blinked, confused. "Of course, Alexander." He took her hands in his gaze never leaving hers. "Then trust me when I say, I want a future with you." Her breath caught. "A future? With me?" she whispered, her voice shaking. Alexander chuckled softly. "With you." Her heart pounded. This was real. This wasn't about deals, deception, or money. It was about them, choosing each other, despite their imperfect past. Just when she thought the night couldn't get more overwhelming, Alexander did something unexpected. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Anna gasped. This wasn't happening." "Alexander," she whispered, her voice trembling. "What are you—" He slowly opened the box, revealing a stunning diamond ring. "I know we didn't start this journey the right way," he said, his voice deep with emotion. "But I want to end it the right way." Anna's vision blurred with tears. Was this really happening? Was he truly choosing her despite everything? "Marry me, Anna." Her breath hitched. "I don't care about how we met. I don't care about the past. All I care about is what we have now." Tears spilled down her cheeks. She had walked into his life as a liar, but now she was leaving behind that past. With shaking hands, she touched his face, whispering, "Yes." As soon as the word left her lips, Alexander crushed her into his arms, their laughter mixed with tears, and for the first time in a long time, Anna felt truly safe, truly loved. No longer a girl forced into a deception she never wanted, no longer afraid of her father's desperation. She was free, free to love, free to be loved, free to start a new life with the man who had stolen her heart. As the moon shone above them, Alexander whispered against her lips, "This is just the beginning." And she believed him, because love had won. The cool evening breeze whispered through the trees as Alexander led Anna to a private terrace high above the city. 1,000 twinkling lights illuminated the skyline, but none shone as brightly as the love in his eyes. Anna's heart pounded as she gazed at him, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with the cozy atmosphere. She had never imagined she would find herself here, standing beside the man she was once sent to deceive. And yet, she had never felt more at home. "Why did you bring me here?" she asked softly. Alexander smirked, his fingers lacing with hers. "Because this is where everything changes." Anna tilted her head. "What do you mean?" He exhaled slowly, as if gathering his thoughts. Then, in one smooth motion, he knelt before her. Anna gasped. Her hands flew to her mouth as her breath caught in her throat. Alexander looked up at her, his expression filled with more emotion than she had ever seen before. "I never expected to fall in love, Anna," he said, his voice raw with honesty. "But then you came into my life, messy, complicated, and so breathtakingly real." Tears welled in Anna's eyes. "I don't care how we started. I don't care about the past." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box, opening it to reveal a dazzling diamond ring. "All I care about is you, and I want to spend the rest of my life proving that to you." Anna's heart pounded so hard it hurt. Was this real? Was this happening? She had come into his life with deception, but she was staying with a love stronger than anything she had ever known. A sob escaped her lips. "Yes," she whispered, her voice trembling. Then, louder, "Yes, Alexander." He grinned, sliding the ring onto her finger before pulling her into his arms. Their lips met in a kiss so deep, so passionate, it felt like the entire world had faded away. They weren't two people from different worlds anymore. They were one. As they held each other, Alexander whispered, "Are you happy?" Anna smiled through her tears. "I've never been happier in my life." For years, she had believed love was something fragile, something that could be stolen, manipulated, or broken. But Alexander had shown her the truth. Love was unbreakable. Love was forgiving. Love was real. And now she was standing in the arms of the man who had proven it to her. Her past didn't define her. Her father's desperation didn't control her. She had found love on her own terms, and she wasn't letting it go. A week later, Anna and Alexander stood in front of their closest friends, exchanging vows in a breathtakingly intimate ceremony. There were no extravagant displays of wealth, no cameras, no press, no business deals. Just them, two souls who had found each other despite the odds. "I vow to love you, honor you, and stand by your side for the rest of my life," Alexander said, his voice thick with emotion. Tears slipped down Anna's cheeks. "And I vow to love you, not for what you have, but for who you are," she whispered. With a gentle touch, Alexander wiped her tears away before capturing her lips in a tender kiss. The guests erupted in cheers, but for them, nothing else mattered. They had found their happily ever after, and it was just the beginning.